Hello, and welcome back to my channel. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Hunter Biden laptop and when we could first know that this wasn't just Russian disinformation. It wasn't a story that had been made up by Rudy Giuliani and some of his friends and published in the New York Post. And it was actually within the first few days of the story that we had really good evidence that this was a thing, and it could potentially spell big trouble for the then Biden campaign. At least it would have if the news media had reported on it in an accurate way, rather than saying that it was Russian disinformation or that it was something made up by Giuliani. So I'm going to be recounting some things that happened very early on in that story. Some of these things I cannot find original material on. So some of it, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to be relying on my memory of what happened at the time. If you have any better information than I do, please feel free to fill that in. I don't want to be wrong about anything, so feel free to leave comments about it. I do have an actual text of the initial statement made by the campaign, the Biden campaign, about the New York Post article. But some of the background of when and how that was given, I am going to be relying on memory. But I think my memory of this is pretty good. So, as you know, the New York Post published this thing about the laptop. It was blocked on Twitter. And then, this is my memory, there was a reporter from one of the network morning news shows. I cannot swear that this is completely accurate, but I'm pretty sure. It was a reporter from one of the network morning news shows that contacted the Biden campaign and asked if they had any comment. The spokesperson they talked to said, "I don't right now, but I'll have to get back with you. I'll check on this and I'll get back with you." So then called back later, I believe it was later that day, and had a statement. Now the statement, I believe, is exactly the same as what's recorded in an article on Politico that I will link down below. And the statement reads, "We have reviewed Joe Biden's official schedules from the time, and no meeting, as alleged by the New York Post, ever took place." The reporter then asked, so is it possible that the vice president, at the time he was the former vice president, he wasn't president yet, it was a campaign, that the vice president had met with him at some other point or incidentally or whatever, and the spokesperson said, yeah, that's possible. So anyway, this first announcement was made that they had reviewed the vice president's schedules from the time, official schedules from the time, and the meeting had never taken place. Now, I want to take this statement itself and the circumstances of the statement, and I want to analyze it. Now, the people in certain types of jobs, if you are a police detective or an attorney or a reporter, somebody who interviews people or interrogates people, you will start to look for certain things that will draw your attention to a statement. For example, you will start to look for lies. And I mean, everybody looks for lies, but you look for lies a little bit differently. And hedged statements. A hedged statement is a statement that is worded in a way to reduce the scope of what's being said. In other words, if you hedge a statement, it means that you're making the statement say less than you actually want it to sound like it's saying. And we find both of these things in the circumstances here and the statement itself. So I want to go into that and why we can know this, if the media had reported on this accurately, and if they had treated it if they treated it the way they should have, asking more questions, looking for more information, it would have been very different for the Biden campaign than it was. So first off is, and I'm going to be talking about both lies that were told and the hedging of the statement. So from the situation itself, the background of this reporting. Now, the reporter, as I remember it, the reporter called the campaign. The campaign said they did not, the spokesman said he did not yet have a statement. He didn't have anything to say, but he would call him back. Now, this kind of indicates that the campaign spokesman didn't really know enough about the situation to be able to give an answer. And this would have been like the day or two after the initial hullabaloo over the New York Post article. Now, it is possible that the Biden campaign had a heads up that this article was going to be posted before it was. It's also possible they didn't. I actually don't know this. I could probably look in the article itself and find out, but it doesn't really matter. Because even if they didn't know beforehand that it was going to be posted, as soon as that newspaper article came online, and as soon as the controversy was happening over Twitter blocking it, phones were lighting up all over that campaign. Before any reporter could talk to them, they were working in major fire control. Because this could be, whether it was true or not, this could be a really big deal. So they were already working on that. They had to be. By the time the reporter talked to that spokesman, the spokesman already knew what he was going to say. They had already decided this. They had been having meetings. They'd been having phone calls. They had already decided what they were going to say. So we have lie number one. And it's kind of a silly lie, but it's worth looking at. Any lie is worth looking at. So this lie was told to make it seem less important. The campaign wasn't really worried about it. The spokesman hadn't even heard about this stupid article by this tabloid rag. Now, that was not true, and the fact that they said something that was so blatantly not true is worth paying attention to, even though in substance, it doesn't actually add anything directly, but it shows they're already starting out by trying to set a narrative rather than just answering the questions. Now, we get into more important stuff, though, with the material in the statement. So, part number one, we have reviewed Joe Biden's official schedules from the time. This contains both lies and hedges. Now, the lies are not direct lies. They're lies by omission and by structure. They are intentionally misleading statements. The idea that all of the information they are about to give you comes from Biden's official schedule at the time, not from Biden himself. They're trying to indicate here that they did not ask him whether he had this meeting and what was going on. Now, that is, of course, a lie. He had to have been involved in these conversations. As the damage control, fire control was going on after the report had first come out, he was definitely involved, and he was definitely asked, what's going on here and what should we say? But they're trying to indicate that he wasn't. This is to create plausible deniability. If more information comes out, well, it wasn't that he said it, it was about the schedules. But there's something kind of funny here, too. What was alleged in this article, well, there were a few things. One is that, at least in some circumstances, Joe Biden was taking kickbacks for the use of his influence. I'm going to put this more succinctly. There is some indication from the information on this laptop that Joe Biden was taking bribes. These are illegal. It is illegal to take a bribe. Now, even if he did not benefit directly financially from the meeting with the head of Burisma, the company that his son worked for, even if that wasn't a bribe, that was still a very unethical thing to do, because he was involved in Ukraine and with situations that he was going to be discussing in his official capacity. And he was going to be taking action that was going to affect what was going on with Burisma, the company his son worked for. So let's say you are a politician. You are a public servant, and you're about to do something that's highly unethical. Maybe it's even very illegal. This is something that could potentially wind up being an impeachable offense for you, and maybe even a go-to-prison offense. Are you going to write that down or have it written down on your official schedule? Yeah, you're not going to do that. That would be really stupid. And I'm going to just kind of assume that the vice president at the time and everybody working for him would know that would be really dumb. And he wasn't going to want to make it, public knowledge that he was meeting with the guy who employed his son in a country with political and, all the stuff that was going on that would make it potentially criminal and almost certainly very unethical and questionable that he would do such a thing. So this statement then says, we looked, to answer your question, you want to know if the vice president ever met with the guy who was employing his son in a country where the vice president was acting in an official capacity. So, this very unethical thing you're saying he did, we looked at his official schedule to see if he did it, and it's not indicated there. So you had this deception in direct form of, kind of an indirect form of lies by omission and structural lies, and then you have this hedging to give plausible deniability if more evidence comes out, as has happened, with photographs and whatnot, that he did have meetings that he said he didn't have. Well, it didn't actually come from the vice president. It came from his schedule, which I guess the meeting was just omitted. We just didn't put his information there. Sorry. Now, then we go on to just more obvious hedging. Now remember, when you're hedging a statement, you are reducing the scope of that statement. You are making a statement say less than what it seems like it might say. So, again, they checked his official schedules from the time, and no meeting, as alleged by the New York Post, ever took place. Now, this does not say no meeting ever took place. Later, the spokesman explained that he may have met with him at some point under some circumstances, but it just wasn't like this. But this hedging is actually very important because, we don't know what changes would have to occur to say that a meeting didn't take place. Let's say there's an article that says, I met with Bob in the basement of his house, and we talked about me buying Bob's dog. And I say, no meeting took place as described in that story. Maybe I met in his attic and talked about buying his cat. It's different. I can say, no meeting took place as described because it's different. Now, that is... To say that also kind of borders on lying, but kind of not. I have hedged it in a way that you really don't know what it means. No meeting took place as described. What does that actually mean? We don't know. So, no meeting took place as described. Now, if you are someone who works in one of these fields where you interrogate people, or you question people, you interview people, you cross-examine people, hedged statements, lies, partial answers to questions, those can range from a bone to chew on to blood in the water. I would say this comes pretty close to blood in the water. The media, overall, at this point, when that answer was given, should have been asking more questions. Okay, How didn't it happen? Did you check any of his unofficial schedules? Did you ask the vice president himself? They should have been, Joe Biden himself should have had to answer questions. He should have had to answer questions, and he didn't. Nobody was asking him after that. Why weren't they asking him? Why weren't they making him answer questions? It's because they knew. A lot of them may have already suspected something already, or maybe they just didn't care. I think there's probably a lot of that too. They didn't care if he was corrupt. He was going to get Donald Trump out of the White House. And they weren't going to let anything like truth get in the way of that. So, excuse me. So when this story came forward, probably a lot of them decided, even before they knew anything, that they just weren't going to pursue it because they didn't want to know. They didn't want to be the person who brought something that was going to get in the way. But after this statement was released, they knew. And I can tell you they knew because I knew. I was suspicious of it before that. I had a number of thoughts. Man, my hair is just bad hair lately. My initial thoughts, and part of it was because of the way the situation had supposedly unraveled with going into a computer store and leaving his laptop behind and all this other stuff. But I also recognized that it was 2020 and the world didn't make sense anyway. So I was skeptical, but holding on to my opinion. I was holding off on making a decision whether I believed this was true or some kind of disinformation created by somebody until I had more information. As soon as I heard that, it's like, okay, it's true. And it was. And it has turned out to be true. And even now, they're not reporting on it the way they should be reporting on it. And nobody has actually forced the president to answer questions about it. If he does run again, if his holds up, whatever they're giving him to help, and that holds up and he runs again, this story may get buried again and may become Russian disinformation. I'm interested to see if it will become Russian disinformation again. But yeah, so when you hear a story like that, it's good to start thinking of it as someone who interrogates people or cross-examines people and look for, obviously, inconsistencies. Everybody knows you look for inconsistencies, but also look for hedging. It's one of the most important things. And when somebody starts hedging a statement or they start saying things that sound like, we looked at a schedule. Okay, so this major news story is coming out that could implicate this politician in corruption and possibly bribe-taking, but definitely corruption, abuse of power, and the campaign didn't involve him in the conversation. Look for statements like that because you'll start to see sometimes the truth behind things, just like the media did with this, which is why they didn't pursue it. They didn't pursue it. Everything they did was to try to bury it. They didn't pursue it because it became evident early on that it was actually a true news story. They knew it, and they lied to you about it for months.